Yeah. 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 Ooh. Hello and welcome back to A Squirrel Plays. Today we'll be tackling what is typically a controversial topic, which means we'll be talking about the big gay demonetization. Here I come. That's right, it's Pride Month, so let's go for a cruise on Rainbow Road. Now, we'll be covering a couple things today, and they might not be quite what you think. There's going to be plenty of YouTubers throughout the month covering their own bits and bobs about the topic, including things like how to make a good LGBT character, how to be more inclusive in your writing or your tabletop games, arguments about whether or not modern storytelling should be inclusive or not, and all that good stuff. So, what are we looking at over here in Squirrel Land? Well, my original intention, as some of you may remember from long ago, was to make a video that went a bit in depth about making LGBT characters. But the more I worked on it, the more convoluted it became. I kept bouncing around from topic to topic and from example to example, and in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it would have been very beneficial to anybody. But I'm not empty-handed, as it reminded me of something that I often fuss about. And I've briefly mentioned that in another video. And that thing that ruffles my fur a bit is when people start throwing around rules for writing. Rules that they seem to barely give any thought to and simply repeat because it sounded good. Rules like if you want to be a good reader, you need to write at least X amount of words per day. A good writer always carries around this kind of notepad to jot things down. A chapter shouldn't be more than this many thousand words. Paragraphs should always be this length. Always use these kind of dialogue tags. Never do this, never do that. The list goes on and on and on, and if you actually pay attention to all these rules, you will soon realize two things. One, they don't play together very well, meaning you can't actually use all of them because they tend to contradict one another. And two, if you actually attempt to use them, your writing will sound horrible. But yet, we keep throwing these ridiculous rules out there like they're gospel. One of my favorites of these rules is that you should never end a sentence with a preposition to which somebody replied, "This is the kind of thing up with which I will not put." There's much debate as to where that quote actually comes from, but many seem to think it was Winston Churchill, despite a lack of proof. Regardless of who said it, the point still stands. The sarcastic response hopefully gets the point across that by following the rule and not ending the sentence with a preposition, it now sounds like shit. And that's what happens when you try to adhere yourself to all these silly rules that people have come up with without actually thinking about how they function in practice. I'm sure most of us here have had that English teacher at one point in our life that smacked you over the head with a ruler and said something like, "Always do this," or "Never do that." Well, here's the thing. When you're writing fiction, none of that matters. That's not just me saying that either. Editors will tell you the same thing. For what little sense it makes, when it comes to writing fiction, there are no rules. But you have to know the rules before you can start throwing them away. And now that that's clear as mud, how does all that fit into the whole LGBT thing? With movies, shows, games, and books being pumped out at an ever-increasing rate, married to the fact that the rainbow is becoming more and more accepted, or at least in some parts of the world, it should come as no surprise that we're seeing more and more colorful characters in our media. It's also probably not very surprising that some of these haven't been done very well. With a hearty mixture of well-written LGBT characters and poorly written LGBT characters, can you guess what's been created as a byproduct? That's right, more rules. If you want to write a proper LGBT character, you have to do XYZ while always avoiding ABC at all costs. And if you're wondering what is actually some good advice, here is a solid cheat sheet for you. 1. Make sure the character's sexual orientation is the same as yours. 2. Shove your character into the story as hard as you can, regardless of whether or not they actually fit. 3. If your character isn't fitting properly, you're not pushing hard enough or you're not ignoring enough people around you. 4. Once the character is in the story, make sure at all costs that your audience knows your character is gay. You can do this by having the character constantly state just how gay they are and that they do, in fact, love being gay. 5. Have your gay character constantly make crude jokes whenever they see a sausage, a banana, an eggplant, or any other assorted object that is shaped a very specific way. 6. When your writing gets bad reviews, make sure to blame your audience and to call them bigoted, hateful, racist, and of course, sexist. If you follow those 6 steps, you'll have yourself a career at Disney, most likely in the Marvel division. Jokes aside, as a boring old straight white guy, even I can say folks of the rainbow are at an immediate disadvantage when they're put into a story. If the rainbow is put on display and it's made clear that everyone knows what they are, then people will claim that it's being shoved down their throats and that there's no need for it. On the other hand, if that rainbow is barely acknowledged, then the other side of the fence will argue that the character didn't get a big enough spotlight or that the story was too afraid to show off that side of the character. It's a situation you're not likely to win because everybody has their own idea on what proper representation is. A poorly written LGBT character stands out at least twice as hard as what you might call a regular straight white character. That doesn't mean straight white characters are immune to criticism. It just means there's more of them and we're used to seeing both their highs and lows. But the LGBT character has more of a spotlight on them due to all the controversy currently circulating around the subject. They're the new kids on the block. The world isn't used to them yet. When it's their time to step up and shine, they had really better shine or they're going to bring the whole thing down on top of them. It's a tough battle, and a battle one might say isn't very fair. And if it sounds like I'm a big defender of LGBT in media, then what I'm about to say next might confuse you. I'm honestly sick of seeing it everywhere. There's been so many cheap attempts to thrust an LGBT representative into a piece of media that it's become predictable at this point. And that brings me to another point, which is hate marketing or rage bait. Not sure what it's really called, but that's what I'm going to go with. A lot of big media is using things like LGBT as well as race to get free marketing. And by using, I mean in an abusive way. To clarify, let's look at something pretty recent, such as The Little Mermaid remake. Disney decided to make her black. Why? It's not because they care about diversity, that's for sure. By taking an already known character and swapping something, in this case their race, it stirs up controversy, which in turn gets Disney that sweet, sweet free advertising. I mean, let's be real. Advertising is expensive. People pay millions just for a few seconds of airtime at the Super Bowl, which if you ask me is just stupid on a stick. But anyway, let's write this out for a minute. First step is to take the announcement, or release the trailer if you will. The first step costs Disney money, and probably a fair chunk of it, depending on how hard they push it around. But with that trailer, we get to see the race swap, and thus starts the wonderful little spark of controversy. From here, 2 things happen. First off, the average person will look at it and just go, huh, and go about their day. Seriously, the average person really doesn't care, and probably doesn't even have enough time to see it anyway. At this point, your money is lost. But then comes the tweets. You have the loud and proud SJWs that will proclaim what a good and wonderful thing it is that insert swapped item here is getting proper representation. Never mind, these same people most likely will also not go see the movie, but hey, it's free marketing. On the other side of the fence, you'll have people getting upset for one reason or another that their character has been swapped somehow. Uh-oh, now you have 2 opposing opinions on the internet. Opinion YouTubers, or whatever the heck you want to call them, will start making their videos every single time a new article on the subject is written. YouTube critics will start making videos on The Little Mermaid, talking about how bad it's going to be or how bad it is to do character swapping like this. Others will make videos about how modern media is in the toilet, and to be fair, it kind of is. The other side will start making videos talking about how racist and sexist the other YouTubers are while making The Little Mermaid the center of attention. TikTokers will tell you that you're not allowed to see the movie on release day because you're the wrong color.
This message is to all our would-be accomplices and white allies. This message is to all the white people who have BLM in their bio. If you really want to prove to Black people that you love us and you care about us and you are down for the cause, do not go see that movie opening weekend.
The fire will grow, and as it grows, other YouTubers that just cover drama in general will start making videos about that too. Then when the movie finally comes out, YouTube reviewers and critics will have to go see it in order to stay relevant. Others will go see it just to see how bad it is, so they can make fun of it. It's a hateful, toxic nasty circular cesspit that honestly needs to die. But apparently it works, because Lord have mercy, have we had some god-awful media the past handful of years, and it's not showing any signs of getting any better. I'm fully convinced Disney is out to write the worst content possible because they've discovered hate marketing and hate views earns them more money somehow. Regardless, we were originally talking about LGBT in writing, and if you were hoping for some tips or some advice, I'm afraid I don't have much. The only thing I can say that you might find useful is to ask yourself this. Does the audience really need to know what your character prefers to sleep with? Seriously. Honest question. Is it at all important to the plot? Does it add anything to the story? If not, then let it go. Let the world assume whatever they want about the character. And yes, this also applies to straight characters. Some information just isn't needed. Your selling point doesn't need to be your character's sexual preference. It just doesn't. Unless, because nothing in writing is ever set in stone. Unless your story revolved around that, such as a character in a country that murders LGBT folks on the spot. Then yeah, that's probably an important detail for your audience to know. Otherwise, it might be a fairly confusing story. But if you're out chasing dragons, pulling magical swords out of rocks, transporting questionable jewelry across the lands, and talking to strange women in lakes, most likely it's not that critical. And if you do think it's critical to your story, ask yourself why. Write out a good explanation as though you were presenting it to a crowd, explaining why it's important, and see if that helps your story any. You might discover that you have a message you want the world to hear, but you're putting it in the wrong story and using the wrong characters and tools. If you want your story to show the injustices of the world when it comes to the LGBT community, a pansexual Spider-Man dressed in drag probably isn't going to be the best way to go about it. Let's make an example real quick. Let's say you're either trans or you support the trans movement, and you would like to write a story that reflects some of what they're going through. Instead of coming right out of the gate and saying, this character is trans and is dealing with those issues in this fantasy setting full of magic and dragons, try something a bit more subtle. Let's make a world with humans and elves, where humans are the same as they are now, and elves are human-looking but have pointy ears and magic. These two races do not like each other, and they both like hybrids even less, with hybrids being half elf and half human. Your main character is a hybrid, and he absolutely loves the magic that he's been gifted. But the thing is, despite looking human for the most part, he does have a pointy ear he has to keep hidden when he's in human cities. On top of that, he absolutely cannot use magic when in those cities either. He has to hide what he is. Now you see where I'm going with this? Despite the fact his magic could probably make things a lot easier depending on the task at hand, he has to keep that hidden or else he'll be exposed and who knows what will happen to him. Then the actual plot happens, and our main character ends up fighting the undead and maybe a big bad evil dragon, saving a kingdom full of humans. After saving the day, the king would like to give him a reward and make a statue of the hero for all to see. It is then revealed just what your main character is, and the king is shocked. Sticking true to his ways, the king says he is willing to look the other way, but informs the main character that he has no home in this city. Our main character then has to leave the city that will know nothing of his good deeds, and he still has nowhere to call home, and he has to continue to hide who and what he is. And when your audience says that ending is mean and unfair, you get to shout,
"That's the point."
People will of course label this as being afraid to write an LGBT character or straight washing or whatever, but what it's actually called is writing a parallel. You make a story everyone can follow and more easily digest. If you try to write a story that focuses on a trans hero that reflects all the things trans have to go through in real life, yeah, sure, you're being inclusive for the trans population, but you're kind of excluding the rest. If that's your goal, then congratulations. But if the goal is to get a message across, then that might not be the best approach. And that's why you've got to ask yourself what you're really trying to get across. What's really important to you? Is it reaching to this very specific community, or is it getting a message to everyone? Are you just writing fan fiction about yourself, or do you want to shine some light on a particular subject? And with that said, what was the point of this video? I don't know. It's just a squirrel rambling, and honestly, I could probably ramble for hours more, but I'll stop where I'm at because I've probably done enough damage as it is. As for the shout out for this video, well, I think I'll pass this time. I'll acknowledge everyone that's been watching, sharing, commenting, and hanging out with me in the Discord because I really appreciate all you guys and gals, but I'll avoid naming any specific names today. It's a controversial topic, which means I have no idea how the video is going to swing. If it gets received in a super negative way, that person I shout out to may not be so happy they were mentioned. So despite the rest of the video, I will play this part safe and leave it as is. And instead, I'll be a selfish turd and self-promote. A couple videos ago, I mentioned that my book was up for sale and that I was waiting for my copy to triple check and make sure everything was good to go. And then when I dropped the next video, I completely forgot to mention that it came out all right. The book has been an absolute uphill battle to finish, but it is finally there. If you enjoy fantasy with magic and dragons, I highly encourage you to go check it out. And if you do, by all means, please let me know what you thought of it. And with that, ladies and gents, I will close this out. And to close us out, I'll actually be serious for once in my life. Guys, gals, or whatever you'd like to call yourself, we're all in this together, and fighting one another isn't going to help anybody. And yes, both parties are guilty. Both LGBT supporting people and non-supporting people are at fault here. I've seen plenty of times both sides go after the other by mocking, being rude, insulting, hateful, and yes, even violent. Acting that way helps no one and not only makes you an asshole, but also part of the problem. And for those of you who try to use the Bible to condemn the rainbow people, I have something to say. I bet my entire life savings that at least 95% of you who quote 1 Corinthians 6:9 haven't actually sat down and studied that passage on your own, nor can you tell me the original Greek word used in place of homosexuality. You also conveniently skip over the rest of the verse as well as the next two that go on to list many other sins that we do every single day of our lives. I don't know about you, but I sure am glad those 3 verses close out by saying Jesus wiped us all clean, else we would all be in a lot of trouble. And since we're all here and got our Bibles open, I'd like to point out that the other commandment God gave that everyone seems to conveniently forget, which is weird considering he said it was the most important. As a matter of fact, it's so important that it's written within all 4 of the Gospels, and that commandment is to love one another. Yet, despite being written at least 4 times, here we are. We can do better, guys. When we choose to hate instead, we become a stumbling block to our brothers and sisters, and our friend Paul had a few choice words about that. Now, I managed to come this far in my YouTube career without deleting a single comment. I've addressed those who were negative towards me, and thankfully, there honestly wasn't very many. But for this video, I won't be tolerating comments that try to use the Bible to justify treating people poorly, or one side hating or mocking the other. And yes, that means both sides. That's not what this community is for. This community is for sharing, growing, and supporting one another, no matter who or what you are. And if you can't handle that, then I'm more than happy to show you the door. And for those of you who do choose to stay, make sure you stay safe and have fun and take care of those around you, because that's what's really important.